Thank you, Georgette. My name is Sharon. I'm an alcoholic, and Raina, class of 75, August 20th, 1975 is my sobriety date. And I love your beauty. I love your beauty inside and out. And thank you, Debbie at Amot. I love Debbie. A little bit more than her husband, but don't tell him. And Tina, I love you, Tina. Gosh, Polly, everybody that's here. And Paula, I just made, what did I make? I made a note about you. I thought, it's you can't stay sober on yesterday's God, and I need a bigger God. So I need to write those things down when I hear them again. And Paula, I've watched her grow and change, and I hope we're growing and changing together, because you're my people. I've been looking for you, the mothership, my whole life, and I came to my first AA meeting. And the gentleman that was speaking, I thought I was just at a church. It was at a church. So I thought, me and God, no, but I'll play the game. I need a place to sleep. And what he said was he always waited for the spaceship to land and say, "You can come home now, Bill." His name was Bill. And I thought, oh my God, I found my spaceship people. And I was so happy looking at all of you, because you kind of look like my spaceship people. So anyway, I found my tribe and didn't even know it in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Jennifer, you didn't realize driving got the DUIs. I love that. I didn't realize, I said to myself once, I got to take better care of myself in my blackouts. It wasn't like, okay, it's not like, okay, let's try not to have blackouts, or let's not drink so much, but I got to take better care of myself in my blackouts. Oh man, my thinking is not always right. And I love the steps so far. My job is to tell you about making a fearless and thorough inventory of ourselves, fearless and moral inventory of ourselves, and then admitting to God, or to ourselves and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And I don't know about you, but I didn't ever say to anybody, "I'm wrong." I just couldn't say it. It was just a word that would stick in my throat. Like when I was new, people would say, "Oh, I'm so grateful." And I'd go, I couldn't say it for a while. Well, my jaw was wired up. I had broken jaw in 3 places, and my nose, and a concussion. So when I came to you, I was, as Fred in the book, pretty mangled by King Alcohol. So I really couldn't talk the first 3 months I was with you in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I had to learn to listen. And what a beautiful art listening is. I think for me, sponsorship helps me listen. Nature helps me listen. I just walk my dog, and it's in the rain, and she doesn't like umbrellas because she's rescued. Who knows what happened to her? So we got pretty soaked, and then she loves me to wipe her down when we come in. That's her favorite thing, is for me to take the towel out. And she knows I'm talking about her because she's right here. But when I wake up in the morning, the vulture's not on the bedpost too much anymore. When I wake up in the morning, I know I woke up sober. If you woke up sober today, what a miracle. We are the lucky ones. It's by seconds and inches that we get to be here. And I pray that all of us have a day of usefulness, because that's all I really wanted to be, was one of God's kids helping other God's kids. And I didn't find that until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I did grow up in Iowa, and I grew up in a beautiful family, unlike Paula. And the Eastern Iowa is very hilly and beautiful, by the way. You got stuck in Western Iowa, Paula, just FYI. So I was a kid that could go out and just enjoy nature, enjoy my life. We lived in the country, and I really loved God, and I knew God loved me. But then I started to realize human beings were mean to human beings, and human beings were mean to animals. And I was like, where's God in this? I didn't understand that God is love. There was no love in that happening. And I talked to my grandma about it. And this is something that I don't know how spiritual it is, but it helped me along the way. She said, "Sharon, we just ask God to please turn their hearts. And if he can't turn their hearts, will he turn their ankles, so that we'll know them by their limping?" And Grandma told me, "Stay away from the limpers, Sharon, stay away from the limpers." And that was a piece of Grandma information. To this day, I don't try to convince the limpers of anything different. I just kind of bless them and move on, because I've got a job to do, to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me. Page 77, our real purpose. There it is. There it is. And yeah, I broke hearts. I broke my family's hearts. I broke lots of hearts. I King alcohol ruled me. I had to slide across the bar. My art talent. I had to slide across the bar, the love of my family. I had to slide across the bar and give to my mother sleepless, sleepless nights. Sleepless nights, not knowing where her daughter was. And I had to slide across the bar my dignity. I had to slide across the bar my passion for life and practically my life. Practically my life. Somewhere along there, before I bounced on the bottom of that elevator going down, God said, hey, kid, we're going to give you a shot. And we're the lucky ones that get a shot. We're the lucky ones that have a way out. So I want to talk about, well, evidently, my first step was pretty much I couldn't talk, so I had to write it out. And I wrote out how I had the craving, how I couldn't stop drinking, because I ended up in New Orleans and you drink 24/7. And that was it. I mean, I got kicked out of the carnival. I got kicked out of an organic farm in northern Wisconsin. I got kicked out of a Huntington Beach commune, and you name it, because I'm a drinker. And it was the late 60s and into the 70s, and people were doing a lot of other things, but I'm a drinker. And I thought, you guys are all boring and I don't need you. And so I would always leave. Grass is always greener. Norm Alpe said the reason the grass is greener is because the other guy took care of his lawn. And you guys taught me how to take care of my lawn. That little seed doesn't know where it's going. It just knows it's going somewhere. But it gets God's love. It gets the tears that we have to cry on the soil. It loosens up that taproot of self-defiance, reliance. It loosens it all up. And then one day, that seed doesn't know, that has to have that big push through that virgin soil, through that hard topsoil. And there it goes. And then it finds the sunshine, and it finds other little seedlings, and it finds each other. And we have beautiful lawns that we can make here for other people to come find and plant their seed. And that's what we do here, is that we save lives. You're right. That's it. We save lives. And so I want to let you know my second step was I kicked Beacon's moving van because it wasn't God. And she said, fine, as long as it's not you. And it was okay, because if you think about a Beacon's, it's not spelled the same way. It's a moving van. I get pictures from all over Canada and the US with people that see a Beacon's van now. Even my son sent me one. It was like, what? He's not in the program, but I guess he sees little Beacon's trucks around the house. But she said, good, as long as it's not you. She was happy about that. So I thought, I'll pray to Beacons the rest of my life. And but it was a power greater than me. And I looked at it like a beacon of hope, and God moved me to you, broken and scratched, old warped bureau. But you guys took me in, and your kindnesses, I will never forget your kindnesses. And I want to always remember that for the new person coming in. They had me sleep on a floor. They gave me a sleeping bag. They picked me up for meetings. They would just say, come on, Sharon, pick me up. We'll take you to see Chuck C. And okay. And I can't talk, and I'm sitting in the middle, in the back, all scrunched between people in a car. And we'd be driving back, and they'd go, hey, Sharon, what'd you think of Chuck C? Well, I couldn't talk. And I just kind of go, like I enjoyed him, but I didn't get what he was saying. Over my head. Thank God I stuck around and got to hear his message, which is love is 1,000 to nothing. Love is 1,000 to nothing. It's not 70, 30, 1,000, 999 to 1. It's 1,000 to nothing. We do it for fun and for free. Thank God I got that from him. It's in his, what he left us to, the new pair of glasses. But yeah, so they would say, what do you think? Really good music and I would go, and I'd smile if I could, because my jaw was pretty badly broken. But what I remembered, sitting in that room with all of you, listening to this speaker that just seemed to light it up, was that I felt safe. I felt safe. And that was one of the pieces of hope you gave me. And at 31 days, I lowered my hand, because I thought, I don't get 31 days. Even in jail, I found the guy making his own stuff. I don't stay. And if I had that feeling come up over my back, that it's not about me, which was my first spiritual thought that I didn't even know was a spiritual thought, but it was not about me. And boy, I chase that. I chase it every day. It's not about me, because I have you. I get to be service to you. And it's such a peaceful place for me to live. So it wasn't about me, and that's good. That's good the way I live today. But So I went on to step 3 with I said to her, I said, my life is unmanageable because I don't have matching luggage coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. What? Where did that come from? That was the best I could do in my first couple of weeks with this rattled brain and not know where I am, and my backpack with the book Be Here Now by Baba Ram Dass, my only worldly possessions. No more dog, no more anything, just that. And yeah, I would have had matching luggage. She said, it's good, we'll start. And our first 3rd step together, because I've done many, and I've done many with you, which are just so beautiful, because now I understand why she wouldn't stop hugging me after we did this thing. She wouldn't stop hugging me. It's like she thought, yay, you're on your way now. Action, here we go. And I just thought, please, I'm going to hit her, because she's smaller and she has her face in my boobs and she's like hugging me. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to hit her. But another thought crept in, which for me was a spiritual thought. Everybody at the Saturday night meeting will know Sharon hit her sponsor. So I didn't. I cared a little bit more about you than my anger, than my don't touch me, than my leave me alone, I'm a loser. I'm a victim and I'm a loser. And I don't like being spotlighted. Okay, there we go. Gallery. I like to look at you guys. So there we go. So she said, I didn't, and then she just wouldn't stop hugging me, and it felt good. Why did it feel good? I think I'm in love with my sponsor. Oh my goodness, I think I must be gay. So somewhere through my broken jaw, I said that to her. I think I'm gay and in love with you. She got it. She said, Sharon, no major decisions in your first year. I was like, okay. She was smart. She was smart. She got me. And then there was this lady. I'm working into step 4 now. Okay. So I get unwired, and I'm working now as a waitress in a coffee shop. I'm a bartender, so I have a bad attitude. You know, they won't let me tend bar. So I just I gave people, people say, how are you? And I'd tell them, they want to hear a sad story from a waitress. They want their eggs hot in the morning. That's what they want. And thank goodness somebody in the Culver City Clubhouse told to an Al-Anon, because they would come over after their studio group Friday night to that poor little Pacific group girl, let's go help her. And somebody from Al-Anon called the queen bee in our group, Sally Carpenter, big meeting in the sky with her husband, Keith. She came up to me at Saturday night meeting. I was working a split shift, and she saw me in my uniform, and she came up and she said, Sharon, when you go to work tonight, I want you to do this. I thought, why is she touching me? I want you to do this. So in other words, she smile. And when they ask you how you are, don't tell them. Just bring them their food. I was like, what? How does she know? So I thought, I'll try it because I want to prove you wrong. I want to prove you wrong. I'm a rebel. I am rebellious and defiant. And so I went out and I did I just faked it. I faked it. They're going to know I'm a big phony. My tips were doubled by the time my shift was halfway done. I thought, okay, maybe I'll listen to these people. Maybe I'll try a few things. So you were leading me along. And then there was this lady that came in the group named Pat Y. She came in 8 days after me, 8 days. And I had the old timer's attention for 8 days, like I even really knew it. But it seemed to me as soon as Pat got there, they went to her. And I thought, oh, she stole my thunder. Who is this girl with 8 less days than me? 8 less days. And she cried all the time, and they were always around her. And I just thought, quit crying. You're such a baby, but I couldn't really say anything. So I would just kind of glare at her. And it seemed to me every time they'd read chapter 5, she'd look at me across the room, because they said, oh my God, Pat's doing her inventory. What? She's doing her inventory. And she would kind of look at me from across the room, and I would just give her those anger eyes. And then, oh, Pat did her 5th step. What? She's got 8 days less than me. She's on my heels. She's breathing down my neck. She's surpassing me. This one that cries. And now she's into amends. Oh my God, I haven't even started my inventory yet. So what happened was, when I finally did my 5th step, finally, 1 week before my first year birthday, it took me months to remember my life. I was so rattled. I couldn't remember things. I would start to write, and then I don't have panic attacks, but I think I had them. And then I would have to put it away, and she'd say, hey, how's it going? Are you writing? It's like, "Mhm, yeah, don't say too much." And Pat had done her amends. And I found out later her husband was dying of cancer. So they pushed her through the steps. They pushed her fast through the steps so she could live in amends before she had to bury her husband, because she had amends to make to him. Oh, but my little designs and plans, as Jennifer said, my little designs and plans, and then we start, and putting out of the mind our own mistakes where we had been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Oh my goodness, that was the beginning. That was the beginning to me. I had to make that resentment list, and I had to put out of my mind. I had to put out of my mind how they had done me wrong, all of that, my mistakes. I didn't have any, and we had to start. And my father was my first, It says, and do not each of his actions make them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can out of the show. As we go into all of this, I have to know that. I have to know that I'm snatching at anything to make me be defiant. I am snatching at self-seeking. I am snatching at how you're wrong now. I'm maybe 6 months sober, and I've not really started that. I had my list, and my dad was first. My dad was first. And second was, my God, and third was Iowa. Those were my big three things. I never thought about my mom for a while until I started to get into it. But yeah, it is to get rid of them promptly and without regret. Fact finding and fact facing. Do I want to be that? Do I want to be? It says we have to be definite. I don't know how to be definite, even in the cause. That's the second one. I can't be definite. I can't remember all the things that made me hate my father, except one big thing. When my dad and I sat down and he said, Sharon, what's wrong with you? He came to the university where I was trying to go to school. He said, look at you. You look different. You act different. Your eyes are different. And I said, Dad, you want to know what's wrong with me? And I told my dad things that dads don't need to know about their daughter. I took away the innocence between us because I knew whatever I had, he couldn't fix me. They had already sent me to the family doctor for Valium therapy. I hate drilling on myself saying, let's party, not my thing. They sent me to a therapist that talks about maybe doing the fifth step with a psychologist. I never talked to them. I thought, we're paying you. I just sat there and thought, you talk to me. I never talked to them. So, the trust issue with letting people know about me, except I told my dad, and he turned away, set his jaw, and we didn't look at each other for 8 long years, eye to eye. And big source of my pain. I think that when Dad and I finally got right, I stood up a lot straighter and taller around the male population. Interesting. It's like I was carrying that weight. And I've been led into that in beautiful ways with the steps, led into the forgiveness, led into the redemption, led into letting my father be the patriarch of the family with me when I needed something. And he was able to do it because the record had been rubbed out, as Chuck C talked about, with amends. But we didn't know any of that yet. So I had to wait for the memories to flood back in, and they did. They started flooding back in at about 10 months of sobriety, and I couldn't stop writing. It was like everything just kind of clicked in with me sitting there for an hour. She said, just go sit for an hour and then call me back. See if you can write something. That accountability, showing up, because I don't always get it. I just show up. And then somehow, some way, when I just give up and loosen my grip, God shows up. And God showed up and helped me with the floodgates open. And it was long. It was long. We sat on the beach all night long, Venice Beach, as I read her my fifth step, my sponsor, who I thought I loved, but I was now planning her death if she mentioned anything from my inventory. I actually knew what bushes I would be in as she left our big meeting on Wednesday night, so I could tackle her if I heard one piece of somebody saying something about my inventory. What a sacred gift we have to have that with somebody who shares back. And then I thought, oh my gosh, she's sicker than me. So, but yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And think I cleaned out enough stuff that when I walked out of her house that morning, because we were there all night long, and Venice Beach wasn't very safe back in those days. And the police kept coming, and they walked over with their flashlights. And I thought, oh my God, did she call somebody? I was really a little paranoid. And, but they realized we were doing something that was, no trouble, but they just, well, we just want to keep you girls safe. And so they sat in their car in the parking lot where they could see us for hours to make sure we were okay, maybe until the sun started to come up. And after I dropped her off and then started walking back to my car, I looked up in the sky, and for a girl that's hardened, came here with no feelings, practically no feelings left. I had to slide across the bar, all of that. I looked up at the sky and I heard a voice that had crept in. I had cleaned out enough to leave this little beautiful voice creep in. It said, I looked at the sunrise and it really was pretty. And it said, angels would live here, as I looked at the sky. And I thought, what? That's too corny. That's not me. Angels would live here. And that's kind of one of my mottos in life when I see something beautiful in nature. Angels would live here. So that's kind of in a nutshell my fourth and fifth step. But yes, I want to talk about, my resentments and all of the musts that are in here and my fear. Oh my goodness. I was very spiritually sick. I'm a survivor. So fear was a motivator. Fear was my guide. Fear was my guide. And even at that last experience on July 27th, 1975, where I was, girl I sponsor sent me the article in the newspaper. I had no idea that she could still find it. I forgot I was raped. I know that I was beaten up. I know that the police came and found me because somebody called, ended up in a lawn chair by a pool, that they followed the blood stains from one apartment to the next. All of that, I had forgotten all of that. How much I was just ready to go. And at one point in the evening, because they caught these guys, and I had to go to a trial with my mouth wired shut, and I was in a blackout and a concussion, and I hardly remembered anything. But this one man had to go to the witness stand because he had heard something. He was the neighbor, and he said, I heard a lot of screaming, and then I was going to call 911, but it abruptly stopped. And at that moment, I remembered I stopped fighting for my life. I stopped fighting for my life. And after I woke up in the sand, face down off the side of the road, I had a moment. And the moment was God said deep down within that, and I don't even know how I heard it because I was out. It said, get up, I want to live. And that I obeyed it. And that's when I was found and brought into the hospital for 2 weeks and ended up living above a liquor store in West Los Angeles where a guy felt sorry for me, and I was drinking my wine through the hole where the tooth had been kicked out through the wires on my face because my jaw was pretty badly broken. And I think about it too, because I think, my scars don't show. There was a plastic surgeon in it's Palm Springs, there's going to be all kinds of plastic surgeons around for those people. He said I had to push your face in to find out where your cheekbones were so that I could make the cuts off your face. And he did. I have wires and little holes putting me together, and he did a beautiful job. That was another gift I didn't even realize until later on, that I could have lost half of my jaw. And but God said, get up, I want to live. And I guess I paid attention. So I'm drinking booze through a place where the tooth had been kicked out through the wires. And that's it. And he said to me one day, you got to leave, you're depressing me. And I called my mom. And mom always helped me out. And my mom said, Sharon, we can't help you anymore. Go to the Salvation Army. And that's when I looked down, there was a phone number there, and I called this girl, Chris. And it's really just picking up the next breadcrumb. Chris was dating this guy, letting me sleep on his couch because I had nowhere to go. Chris was the girl in Barney's Beanery with her head on the bar on a book of Alcoholics Anonymous, almost passed out. And they called her a taxi to go to A&A, and we gave her a toast as she went out of the bar. That was April. I'm dying, but I'm feeling sorry for this girl going to A&A. And her number was there, and she was always nice to me. So I called her, and she had known what had happened to me. And she said, I can't help you, but Suzanne can. And I called a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Chris wasn't sober that day. And Chris died at 31 years old of wet brain. didn't know me, didn't know us. The nurse said, you can go in and talk to her, but she's just not going to know you at St. John's Hospital. And she didn't. But I thank her for answering the phone that day and for leading me to a sober member that I didn't even know I was going to an AA meeting. Like I said, I thought it was a church. So that was what came in. I really, the steps were very simple for me in the beginning. She just said, okay, that's good enough. Let's move on. Okay, that's good enough and move on. But the fourth step was huge. The fourth step was where the floodgates opened. The fourth step was where, I get to see what a victim I've been too. What a victim I've been. And I don't know about you, but I think it took about 7 years to hang that victim cloak up and not respond to that, because it was part of my survival. All of that defiance. And I hung up that victim cloak at about 7 years of sobriety. And every once in a while, I have to go check it out. I feel bad for myself, the self-pity. I'll go put it on. It smells musty. It's itchy. It's wool. It's damp. Oh, I can't live like that and be in God's world. So I had a lot of long lessons coming to me that I didn't have to have all at once, but writing my fourth step and opening the floodgates, and then my dad, and my wrongs, what were my wrongs? I was the middle girl child. He didn't give me enough attention. I'm in Iowa, for God's sakes. What am I doing in Iowa? I'm supposed to be in California or Hawaii or somewhere. And, I saw at my girlfriend's place, I saw people being mean to people. It wasn't in my house, but I saw that start to happen. I saw what, sometimes what happens to dogs on a farm or cats. And I'm a big rescue girl. And that's that. If I sponsor you and you're whining, you're getting a pet. You got to go get a dog or a cat. You know what dog spelled backwards is, right? So that's how I start my mornings now. The vulture's not there. I just start my mornings with God, 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 God. I have to say God's name about 10 times. And my dog thinks that's her name in the morning. And she will wait for me to serve her. I serve her. I serve my dog water, nice cold water in the morning after I talk to God with God, God, God. And that's what I get to do every day. I get to serve God. And then I ask for the flow and I go out in the world. Let me follow the flow. And sometimes it's God, if you're there, I'm here. Sometimes it's that simple. God, if you're there, I'm here. I'm alcoholic. I'm not always going to have happy days, but I have joyful days because joy is wrapped around gratitude. And every single day I wake up sober, I'm grateful. Every single day. I had to bury my husband. I had my first husband that I had the baby with leave me for a newcomer in the room. Nobody got custody. My second husband, 24 years, died of cancer 9.5 years ago. We had to bury my father, who had an accident on his land in 1999. Quick, gone in a second. And I got to thank AA for being in my mother's kitchen when I got off the plane in Iowa. I got to thank you, women. Thank you. And I have to thank the men for sitting around my husband when he had cancer, was going to the meetings. And everybody wanted to talk about their cancer, or their great aunt, Beatrice, who was saved at Lourdes, and I'll get you some Lourdes water. And he said, I just want a meeting, Sharon. I don't get a meeting. So I mentioned it to one of his friends. And from that moment until the day he passed away and couldn't go to a meeting anymore, the men sat around him and talked about golf, talked about what they had been doing, talked about fun things. And I thank you for that, because we're a community here. We need our unity, and we have to protect each other inside the rooms and outside the rooms. If you're gone, I'm going to try to at least connect with you. I've sponsored women since I was a year sober. So I've sponsored women for 44 years, and I've learned a lot. I've learned so much. I learned that between you and me is God, and God falls out. That's if I'm clear. That's if I'm clear. And I will give God the credit and say that was just for you, because I'm not that wise. I really am not that wise. So I had to look at that. I had to look at all of that and put down, my what happened, and then my wrongs. That was like, what? And she wouldn't let me just say, oh, that affects my self-esteem. She said, how? So I had to write how, so that the next time I'm feeling the how, like, well, people, discard me, or they interrupt me, and just things like that. She said, okay, then maybe you just wait. And she gave me some solutions, but then I was able to see it. Oh, this person interrupts me all the time. There's not really a conversation here. Right up to when my husband died and I went to my job and my boss said, come in, I know, come in. I thought Kleenex is coming out, door's going to be closed. I've been there 14 years. And he said to me, Sharon, I'm really sorry this happened to you, but if you can't do your job, will you let me know? And I'll tell you, at that moment in my grief, I tore a piece of skin out of my finger so that I wouldn't go over the desk at him. And so people can, there's people that aren't, supportive in your life, whether you're at work or, and they're the limpers. I got to let them go. It's okay. I don't want to wake up in my bed as I did for almost a year after that happened with every friggin' lawyer that was mean to me. Everyone in that firm that wouldn't acknowledge that my husband died, wouldn't look me in the eye, wouldn't do any of that. I woke up with them every morning with my heart racing. And it took me a long time to understand that people don't understand grief. People don't want to talk about grief. It's just, it's not in that kind of a environment. No one wants to even give you a card or catch your eye but I did do something because my sponsor, Clancy, I've had him for 35 of my 45 years. He said to me, what can you do about that? So I said, well, maybe I can talk to HR about it. And so they had a new HR director and she said, tell me some things that didn't go right. And I did. And I don't know, maybe it was 6 months later, somebody's husband died, one of the secretary's husband died of a heart attack quickly at home, and they put in place how to help her. They put in place how to help her. And I was grateful that once again, it's not about me. And so I'm way a little bit off track, but I'm just telling you how I live my life today, how I got to the point of being able to clean it out so that there's a little voice deep down inside of me that says, Sharon, you can be useful. Sharon, you're not that middle child that's not enough. That's my taproot. I'm not enough. So I'm going to just be defiant and not ask questions. You never ask questions and you don't tell the truth because it's not enough. So I went through many years of my life being, I don't know, not authentic to myself, whatever that means, I guess. I want to be authentic to my God, because when I'm authentic to my God, then I'm authentic to you, because it's a clear channel. All right, so let's see. I always note you guys, but I'm an experiential person. That's the way I understand my life. And this, as we know, the big book is not, as Sandy used to say, it's not the treasure, it's the treasure map. It's how I get to my awakening. I have to have my own path, my own experience, but you're with me every single way. And and I had my dad was the biggest, because it colored my whole life. And he loved me. He never did anything wrong to me. He loved me, but I took it away. I took it out of his heart for me. He has 3 other children, fine. They're great, they're successful, and then there's me. And I have to look at my mistakes, and I have to look at my wrongs. When I did another inventory with Clancy on my wrongs of a marriage that he cheated on me, and he's marrying the newcomer, pregnant and married in that order, inside my room, inside my safe room of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said I couldn't throw the hot coffee on him. I wanted to. I was on my way one night, and he said, Sharon, you're going to walk through this with dignity and grace. And I was ready to say, I want revenge. I don't care about dignity and grace. I was 10 years sober and a mess. He said, so you can be an example to others. What a beautiful thing to catch my attention, because I love the example of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was that example to my parents. I was that example to people that I would call home at the holidays at my grandma's house. And my brother said, my mother didn't know what AA was about in the beginning. Nobody did. They just knew that I wasn't moving. I wasn't asking for money. I was accountable to a phone call once a week. And that my mother would get off the phone with me, and grandma and all the aunts would come around and go, how's Sharon doing? And she would go, she's in AA. She whispered it because she didn't know anything about it other than it was anonymous. It was so cute. And she got to come sit with you till she was 95 years old. I'm so grateful. And she had no more sleepless nights not knowing where her daughter was. I just found a box of letters that my brother had given me. He must have cleaned out my mother's things and forgot he had them. And many of them were returned. And my mother would always send me a Valentine present. And when I was working in the French Quarter, and she knew of one bar, but not the next or the next or the next, as I worked my way down to seedier bars, because I have a bad attitude, I'm a bad drinker, and even the local people don't want to hire me. The local people don't. But it made it to me because she knew if I got that Valentine present, I'd call home. And maybe it was maybe a month later, and I called home. How many sleepless nights? It's not about you, Sharon. It's not about you in this world anymore. It is to help people find love, whatever it is, wherever the love is. I'm going to help you try to find it, because God loves me so much. And my God is love today. My God is everlasting love, because I'll never reach it. I mean, you gave me, whatever I wanted, and my Beacons truck has grown into everlasting love. I'll never reach everlasting love. So it's not like, as my friend Marilyn says, if you meet your Buddha on the road of life, which is what she's saying, if you meet your God on the road of life, she said, kill it. What? I'm not going to kill my Buddha. That's what she's talking about. She said, if you understand your God and you meet your God, you need a bigger God. So I don't know, somewhere in there, I just thought I'll never reach everlasting love. So that is where I am headed. Wherever it comes, whenever it's there, it'll be at the big meeting in the sky. And I hope they let me be a greeter for a while, but gosh. So yeah, I know that, I mean, evidently I really did a pretty good job on my inventory, because it was very long. And then we made the amends list, and thank God, because she burned it. Don't burn your inventory, because there were other things in it I think I needed. So that was like, my first sponsor, God bless her. God bless her. But it was big. She said, we're going to put it in this and we're going to burn it. And it was like, oh, okay. So it's a good thing we had made some amends list before, but, because I couldn't really go back to it. But I had, as it says, you made a good beginning. I made a good beginning. And many people it says that if you don't, thorough about our personal inventory and have written down a lot, we have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend the futility and their fatality. And it also talks about people that possibly this is why they drink again, no matter when. They haven't been thorough with their inventory. And then, it goes to fear and sex. And I got to tell you, and it's no big reason, but this is my page 69. My book broke with the binding on sex. And she said, we're going to talk about fear and sex. Well, I fear sex. I don't know. Is that it? Is that enough? So I don't know. You got to have a sense of humor, because in my 45 years of sobriety, I've had 2 men, both husbands. What? I couldn't even keep a list before I got here. I couldn't even keep a list. At one time, I think I started to try. I don't know why. I was living in New York City. But, I saw Looking for Mr. Goodbar. If any of you remember that movie, we were lucky to be here if we just strangers, and bad things happen when you pass out in someone's car sometimes. And, and I went through that sobriety too. I was very afraid of getting shot. My friend was shot and killed on Mardi Gras Day, my last year of drinking, in February, March of 1975. And I had to step over his body. He was outside my door, and I felt very guilty. I didn't know what happened. I was in a brownout. He was shooting at people off the balcony. I don't even remember. The police were called, and the policeman that was standing there at the bottom of the stairs said to Michael, don't lower your gun, Michael, put it away. And Michael lowered his gun. Was it suicide? I don't know. And going around the rooms of AA and being an example, going back to the International Convention in 1980, in New Orleans, almost 5 years sober to make more amends. I tried a 12-step. 2 of my buddies that ran with me. Her name was Denny, and the other girl's name was Robin. And they don't remember. Denny remembers. She didn't recognize me. The word out in the street was, you should see what that ANA has done with Mama Cher. I had pancreatitis. My gallbladder was removed. I had liver spots on my face. I'm about 180 pounds of bloat, and just every piece of tequila I ever drank just stayed in me and just made me big. I didn't eat. I was just a mess. And then they saw what you had done with me, the example. She said, I didn't even recognize you. 4 years later, Robin got sober. 5 years later, Denny got sober. Denny was sitting in a Mardi Gras sober meeting 1 year after that, after they got sober. Denny, who I was staying with, that was my couch where that all happened at her apartment, said that this man started talking about the shooting that was in his building on Mardi Gras Day. And she said, oh, I'm going to talk to him afterwards. And it was him. She said, can you tell me what happened? And she came and told me that I had nothing to do with him outside the door, that I wasn't outside the door with him, because I came to right inside the door, not knowing I heard the shots. So I had this huge fear of being shot, huge fear. I would like put my key in the door at night and I would move quick. I wouldn't let somebody come up next to me in the car. I didn't even realize that I was carrying that fear of guilt around with me. And it was relieved because meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and people that we connect with. We connect for reasons. We connect, yes, to stay sober today, but we don't even know where the ripples go. Every once in a while, if you keep your eyes open, you can see it hit the shore. Like with my dad. My first trip home with my dad was very just, it was the way it was. It was like, okay, Sharon, and I stood by the car with him and said my 3 little lines of my amends that we had written and I had memorized. And he just said, Sharon, I always wanted you to be happy. Nobody was eye to eye yet. My mother and I were great from the start, great from the start. And so, that's the way it was. And then dad came down to Los Angeles. He drove out from Iowa with my mother and my sisters came and we had a wedding. I married my first ex-husband, boy meets girl on AA campus, but we were in love. And my dad walked me down the aisle and somebody took a picture, 2.5 years sober, going home happy, calling happy. My sponsor said that's what he wants. We were eye to eye. Me in my wedding veil and him, my handsome dad on his arm. It was a really, as it said, it's a good beginning. It's a good beginning. And, and then later on with my dad too. And dad, it was so important for me to know this, that my dad and I had forgiveness because I took away. I put a big, heavy piece of musky blanket on his love for me. He couldn't even express it for those 8 years. And he worried about me. When I was in jail in Bogalusa, Louisiana, he came down. He tried to get me out. We didn't go eye to eye. They threw me in a room. I was a mess and I was handcuffed. And I hope I never forget that day because I didn't get to say to him, how's mom? How are you? How's the family? He said, all you said was that you weren't guilty and it wasn't your fault. And I believed every piece of it because I'm still a victim. And my dad had to go back home thinking they let me out and they kept me until they were ready to let me out. So that was on the list of financial amends. Believe me, my dad read the book. He took him to a meeting and went to the literature table. And thank God he was free to do that. Thank God that he was free to come and walk his daughter down the aisle. Thank God. And then my second sponsor said, you need to make financial amends to your dad. So I had to do that. And it was magical. I had no idea that it was still, my dad was still between me and my happiness, between me and my joy, between me and my God. All of that guilt was still there. I knew I owed him money. I just thought he didn't need it. We never really got that far in the inventory about the money. And so I got this other sponsor. She said, call your dad up and ask him if you can pay him back the money you owe. And you know what? He said, sure, it's this much. He had run a calculator tape. So being defiant, thank God, because my defiance has been loosened by God's tears, loosened by my tears, loosened by the rain that comes from the sky for fun and for free. So that I have been able to dig that defiance out little by little by little, so it doesn't get in the way of the beautiful lawn that you've helped me plant. So my dad had run the calculator tape, gave me an amount. I called my sponsor back. And this is, this is stuff that she didn't say I had to pay him back the money. She didn't say it. I mean, I took cars, it was nonstop. And so she said, okay, you're the example of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here we are again. Maybe the only example your dad will ever see. So send him the payment terms. He appreciated it. And he said, okay, that's good. Be on time. Bill and Bob are watching. Dr. Bob and Bill are watching. I was on time. And then she said, put a note with your check to your dad. Don't send the cold hard cash alone, she said to me. So I had to put a note about my life. And all of this with dad, all of this that was so in the way of my even loving completely. It's caught in my throat. All of that came out of the inventory that he was it. He was the first one and he colored everything because I let it. And I made him out to be somebody who didn't love me. I made him out to be somebody who didn't give me what I needed. I had it though. It was always there, but I blocked it. And my dad got a check and a note, and then he called me 4 years and 10 months later and said, daughter, and now it's, when I go home, it's better. We're eye to eye. We can spend the day together in the car. He said, daughter, I don't want your money anymore, but don't stop sending me your notes. And the beautiful part about watching a ripple hit the shore. So dad was the biggest. Dad was the biggest. And it freed him up for redemption to be as I said, the patriarch of the family. When I was going through that messy divorce, I needed a car. And guess what? My dad called me 2 days after we had our Sunday night talk. I have his little baby in the car, his little grandbaby, my son, and the two of them are off doing something. And I hated her, but I had to do another inventory in her, and she was on the top. She was before he was, my husband. They said, you can't pray for her to drink. And I remember whispering to some old timer, can I pray for her to die? I was so broken at 10 years again. And I hated all of you because betrayal is one of my worst character defects. If you betray me, that's the line in the sand. You're gone. You're gone. But no, I didn't throw the hot coffee. I was the example, and Jill was there and my car died. And my dad said, your mother and I are driving you out of car. My dad was free to be a dad again. So I got a Ford Galaxy with deer whistles, and nobody knew what deer whistles were in California. It's kind of funny. So yeah, my dad, when he was killed in 99, it was boom, it was gone that day. I had an intuition, something was happening that day. Someone said to me, what's wrong with you today? I said, I don't know. I have this impending doom and it's not mine, is what I said to her. And that was my dad's day. It was fast, it was over, it was an accident on his land. And yeah, he was gone. And I got to write one more note and put my chip in the little drawer they have in the coffin. And we were good. I am my dad's little girl. I mean, we sat there once at a root beer stand and drinking our A&W after a long day together, driving back home from Cedar Rapids to Ivanhoe Bridge, and where we lived by the Cedar River, and beautiful, beautiful drive. And there was a root beer stand. And so we sat under a picnic table and just had our root beers. And if you wouldn't have started with me with that inventory with my dad, I wouldn't have had that moment. Because if you would have seen my legs under the picnic table, they were swinging like a little 6-year-old girl. We were on new footing together. Thank you, God. So, okay. I love being with you because I love being with women. I could talk so much more about a lot of this. And I got to tell you, Jill, my sponsor, said, because she was on my list of my wrongs, that was the hardest inventory I had to write. They betrayed me. Why is it my wrongs? He had the affair. What is it wrong? There's nothing wrong with me. Look what he did. I had to look at me, and it didn't come until it was one painful, another sleepless night with my son crying all night long. I found my grandma's quilt and I wrapped it around me, and I sat on the heater and I wrote. I have to get to the point where it just comes out of me. And sometimes it has to get to a painful point. Not so much anymore because I'm pretty darn current. I like being current now. I like 10, 11, and 12 every single day of my life. But yeah, I had to be pushed to it with pain. And so I had to look at my wrongs and read it to Clancy in the cars. We went to speak in Pasadena, and he looked at my defiance again. There was my defiance again, standing in the way of being useful to God's kids. And he said, when your son gets home, because they had a little baby and he would go over there and get to know his brother, and your son gets home on a Sunday night and you pick him up, don't say anything about her. But she buys him things and she does things. And he comes in the car and goes, Jill did this and Jill did that. And I just thought, don't bite your tongue, he said. And you know what? I bit my tongue raw. And 2 years ago, we were he was out of the country. He came back and he said, Mom, let's have coffee. I said, great, I missed you, so we were catching up, and one of my girls had sent him a talk of mine. He wanted to hear a talk of mine, which was very odd, but he doesn't need us. It was somebody he knew that he wanted to hear my talk, I guess. But we sat down and he said, Mother, and my son is in his 30s when we're sitting down, I didn't know you went through all of that with Jill. He got to make up his own mind about his stepmom. He got to have his own relationship without me getting in the way. But one day, his dad left Jill for somebody else. And one day in the car, driving him to school, he looked at me and said, Mom, my dad's a marrying fool. I was like, oh, you got it. You got it all on his own. But Jill and I are best friends. We raised the kids together. Jill and I went to Europe together. Jill gives me a cake every year. Jill and I do with the kids, we do anniversaries, and we do, Christmas, and we do things together. We do Mother's Day together. And when my husband came in my life, my dad got to know I was okay with this man because he was a man. And he took care of me in ways that the other one was kind of young, we were both young. So he saw my security. He saw that I could put my head up, my shoulder under him and my head on his shoulder, that I would let him comfort me, my husband. And he had never seen that before. But you got me there. You got me there, and thank God. And I had to write another inventory when my husband got cancer. And I walked in the house one day, and Paula talked about being in Prague. That's where my family on my dad's side is from. And they escaped. And then I walked in the house, and he'd just been to treatment. He said, Sharon, let's see, I want to know how I'm doing. What do I have left? 5 minutes? I think so. I think I'm looking at my little timer. He said, Sharon, you've been home 15 minutes and haven't made eye contact yet. And there's my husband sitting on the couch with his ball cap on because he lost his hair, just with another big treatment, not feeling good. I see the oatmeal in the microwave I had made for him in the morning. So he was at that point of not eating sometimes. And I must have walked around, complaining about this, complaining about that. And he just sat there on the couch. And then, I don't know, 15 minutes later I went around again, and he said, Sharon, you've been home 15 minutes and you haven't made eye contact yet. He's got an expiration date, and I am complaining. Oh, I went and got this check thing my dad had given me. He had made, it's welcome and check for Tommy Voss, and I hung it on the door. So before I walk in, I'm going to take that hat off, whatever it is I'm bringing in the house, touch that, ask my dad to come in with me, and to be with my husband for making more memories, because life is short. So my dad has been through my life in just beautiful threads in my life. Okay, how about fear? Yeah. Not just that, I was afraid to fly too. I was afraid to fly, and I got this job with this travel agency, bringing travel agents all over Mexico and other places for familiarization trips. And they were always drinking a lot, and I was to keep them corralled. And then we go to these hotels that were in our packages, and I'm in a suit. I have a briefcase back in those days, and I got my big book in the briefcase, and I would sit on the plane and I would hang on. I would go, okay, faith over fear, faith over fear, faith over fear. And I thought, God, give me a sign if I'm not supposed to get on the plane. And one day, central office called me for a 12-step call. We used to get them back in the day like that. And I said, I'm catching a flight. And I thought, oh, I got on the plane. I go, that's the sign. I mean, if you're living in fear, you're going to look for whatever you need to be afraid. And I just got tired of it. I just got tired of being so amped up with fear and having to hold myself in the seat physically. My hands would get sore, my arms would get sore. And I looked up at first class, and there was an empty seat. And I thought, God's sitting there. Of course, God's in first class. So I just thought, God's on the plane with me. And it just was in a moment, because I had written about it. I had done it hadn't been released for me until that moment. And my awareness of the empty seat, being aware of those little things that lead us down the path of becoming a whole human being. And I wasn't afraid after that. I always let God get on the plane before me. And I look in the pilot's eyes to make sure they're nice and clear. But okay, so that's just a couple of my fears. Of course, I now was afraid to not be enough. And the last week that my sponsor was at our Wednesday night meeting, and then he got pretty darn sick, and he didn't come anymore, and he was hard to reach. And but I was telling him about after 30 years in the legal field, they let me go. I had a separation agreement. It was probably ageism, but whatever. I'm not going to fight it. I want my separation agreement. I don't want to take all these people home with me. I'm going to get 2 hours and 15 minutes back in my day every day just from being in traffic. I am sailing at 166. That's my blood pressure. And my sponsor said, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? You shouldn't look like that." I'm afraid all the time again. I was afraid all the time, losing my job, losing my house, losing everything. I was living in fear again. And my sponsor just sat there and listened for a little bit, and he looked at me. We were just before the meeting. I was sitting next to him. He just looked at me and he said, "Sharon, it's because you're defiant." And it was like, bingo. I just bring that back out and wear it when I'm in pain or I'm afraid. So I've learned how to recognize it, because I am living a much more joyful life the last couple of years, even through the pandemic. So yes, we made a good beginning with my dad. And Iowa, I just think, Iowa was, my God is everlasting love, and Iowa, I made peace with Iowa. I just made peace with it. My family's now from Wisconsin. That's where they all are after my mother passed away. Well, I have some in Alaska too, but because they have cheese. It just seemed more dignified than pigs and corn. It's like, hence I'm a cheesehead. What can I say, Tina? When I was drinking, people would say, "You have a Midwest accent. Where are you from?" And I go, "Wisconsin." It was like, because I was never enough. And I had a different name. Sharon was corny. It's like, so I decided to be Cindy Lou the Who from The Grinch. So I was Cindy Lou from Wisconsin. And every now and then, just to be funny, I'll give my name to Starbucks, just to be funny, right? And then I forget they're calling Cindy Lou for my drink. It's like, "Cindy Lou, where are you?" "Oh yeah, that's me." Oh, you got to laugh at yourself. You're missing the joke. I mean, thank God I laugh every day. I am laughing more in this pandemic because I have a dark laugh. I laugh at dark things. And so everybody in the group would hear somebody laughing and they'd look and go, "Oh, Sharon, she's really dark." But in here, I can laugh out loud. Like, and maybe before you, a lot of times, maybe I'm the only one laughing. My first time I ever laughed was because of a dead dog story, and it just hit me funny and I couldn't stop laughing. And it's not funny. And everybody, as I said, that I sponsor has a rescue animal, or I'll send one to your door somehow, some way, because the world needs more love. That's what we're about. The world needs more understanding, more love. And I want to tell you the Iowa story, and then I'm going to stop. I was in the van. They picked me up at the airport. I'm sober, maybe, I don't know. I'm in the amends. So maybe I'm sober 7 years or so. My younger sister's getting married. So they come pick me up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was on a night flight, and sitting in Chicago that morning, I found a little place that was quiet, and I did some meditation because I needed it. And they picked me up and they get me in the van, and it's like we're driving on that beautiful Cedar River Road. Everybody's there. And I realized that my dad's talking to my older sister about finance because she's brilliant. And I'm thinking, "Dad, I'm paying you back. Bring me in the conversation. I might have something to offer." And then I hear my mother talking about the gifts for the bridesmaids. And I'm thinking, "Mother, I'm from LA. Come on. Fashionista. I just got off the plane. I'll help you. Ask me." No. And then my brother, that was it. He's talking to his new brother-in-law about fishing. And I thought, "Miles, I taught you how to put a worm on a hook. Talk to me about that." Nobody was asking me. I'm in the middle of the van having cathartic sobbing when I realize it. Cathartic sobbing coming out of me. My dad stops the van. He turns around and looks at me, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I thought, no, I'm not. this is the moment. I've had this, I've got, I can get my soapbox. It's all wrapped up in my purse. I can unwrap it and put it out and tell you all why I'm not okay. 7 years sober. And I heard a voice because I had opened up a little space in meditation that morning that said, get out of the van. So I did. And somehow, some way, looking at that beautiful cornfield and that beautiful blue sky, somehow, some way, I thought Iowa's beautiful and I'm glad to be from here. I'm glad to be an Iowa girl. And thank God I didn't, because the example had my father 12-step the town drunk. The town drunk, my mother told me this after. If I hadn't been an example and coming home and making those amends to my family, would they have even listened to me? No, not at all. They respected Alcoholics Anonymous. So much so that when the town drunk came to my dad, my mother told me this after my dad is gone. She knows I'm defiant, right? She just knows that I might find something wrong with it, right? So she knows. And the drunk came to my dad to complain about his wife. And my dad said, it's not Mary's fault. I think you're an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous has helped my daughter. Maybe it'll help you, and gave him the big book that he had and all his books stacked. And I was speaking in a meeting because my mother had told me that maybe 2 months later, and it was on my heart about the town drunk. And this girl came up to me and said, do you recognize me? And I said, no. She said, you babysat me. I said, oh yeah. She told me your name. I said, oh my God, I smoke pot all the time. I babysat. Are you okay? More amends to make. You gotta just pay attention to, she wasn't on my list. I wouldn't have thought of that. But she said, I just want to tell you, my Uncle John that you spoke of, the town drunk, is still sober. Wow. That your dad 12-step. Wow. And then she said the kicker. She said, I went home 2 years ago from California to a family reunion, and my Uncle John 12-stepped me, and I have 2 years. I got to see a ripple hit the shore just for a moment. God is always making ripples. God has always got the flow. My job is to step in it and get out of my own way. And yes, I've done an inventory, a complete inventory with every sponsor. I have a new sponsor now. I've memorized her number. Jenny was talking about that. Jennifer was talking about that. I memorized her number and she gets me and I get her, and I'm really happy. And my sponsor had approved before he passed away. So all of that I am a melting pot of all of you. And my heart is broken open. I think broken open hearts heal bigger. I have a lot of love to give. I'm not done yet. As Don Pritz said, we can't forget the newcomer. And this is one of my favorites. And as Bill sees it, we must think deeply of all those sick ones still to come to AA. As they try to make their return to faith and to life, we want them to find everything in AA that we have found, and yet more, if that be possible. No care, no vigilance, no effort to preserve AA's constant effectiveness and spiritual strength will ever be too great to hold us in full readiness for the day of their homecoming. So I want to welcome you home. I'm thankful you welcome me home. I love being with you women. You just opened and shared so much back with me with your love. Thanks very much.